everybody out there on Facebook and YouTube land. It's Michelle coming to you from the Mesa campus of ASIS. And today, our very special guest is the chairperson for the Arizona Massage Board. There we go. State. Yeah, that's what happens when it's live. So the first question I'll ask her is to correct her title. Angie Reiter is going to be joining us in just a minute. We wanted to talk a little bit about clearing up some misconceptions about what the board does, what the staff does, who the staff is, who the board is, and how they're actually two different groups of people. And just understanding some of the processes that goes on behind the scenes, because there's a lot of confusion that goes on when talking about government and policies and regulations and everything. So I'm so excited that she agreed to be on the show today and talk with us. So without further ado, let's say hi to Angie. Hi, Angie.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. We're so very happy that you joined us today, for being able to help us clear all these answers up for us. Every single question. It's all on your shoulders.
I'm going to do my
best. So I sometimes when we're live and doing these things, I kind of get a little tongue-tied, but people then know we're all human. We were just talking about that before we started, that we're all people too, which is some of the things I think we're trying to do and bring awareness to by doing this conversation, is that there are people behind this work, and it's not as simple as sometimes people are making out to be, just fix this or just fix that, right? So but before we get into that, let's learn a little bit about you. How did you get into the field, and what's been like the journey? I know you have your own business, and I have heard you teach and all kinds of things. So tell us a little about you in the field.
Absolutely. So I actually started out in cosmetology school as part of a program that I had in high school. And I started out in a salon as a shampoo girl. Cool. Because of family dynamics and moving around and stuff, I wasn't able to finish cosmetology school, but I did end up becoming a nail technician. Okay. And I did that for about 15 years. And during that, one of my, actually quite a few of my clients, but one of my clients in particular said, "You give the best foot massage ever, and you should go to massage therapy school." And I was like, "Is that a thing? Can I make money doing that?" And so I did some research and I applied. Way back then, the requirement was you had to get a massage from a licensed professional before they went into the class. Okay. So that's where I started out in massage therapy school. And then probably about 5 years into my massage therapy career, I decided that I really wanted to spread the love a little bit more. And so I decided I wanted to teach. So while working in another salon and managing it, I also started teaching part-time. I started teaching at Kaplan College in Indiana. Okay. And then after I got my feet wet a little bit, I went back to the school that I graduated from, the Chicago School of Massage Therapy, and started a teaching assistant position there and worked my way to instructor. That particular school ultimately became a Cortiva school. And so when I moved out here about 12 years ago, then I started teaching at the Scottsdale Cortiva.
Okay. Oh, very cool. I love that. I love your little journey with that. So were you with Cortiva for until they had to close, or yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you know some of our peeps here. So
I do. Yeah. So I was there until they closed in 2019. And towards the end, the last year or so, I was a career services manager and director of education. So I became very familiar with the licensing process, the applications together. And that's kind of where it kind of took me to where I'm at now. So
okay, so it's really interesting to me that so sitting in my position as an education director and knowing the behind the scenes that we deal with the red tape and the licensing, I can see how you might sit there and say, I think I need to get involved in this a little bit and like maybe help, because I have some resources that I think I can provide, but also like something's got to get done, and maybe I'm the person to do it. Was that a little bit of what was going on in your head?
It was a lot of bit about what was going
Mhm.
on in my head, and, ultimately, what ended up happening was last year, one of my graduates had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I just always remember your ethics class and how good you were and how passionate you were about scope of practice, and you would be really good at this." And she included a link,
Mhm.
for me to apply for a position on the board. And I was
Nice.
like, "Well, I don't have anything else to do, let's add one more thing, to the plate."
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was getting
Mhm.
myself into, and I've
Mhm.
learned so much in the small
Yeah.
amount of time that I've been on the board.
Oh, I can imagine. I can only imagine. I just being in my position and reading through the rules and regs on my own and trying to decipher things and all that. Like, and then you have to have a crash course pretty much and be able to do what you do. So I know I've listened. I try to listen to every single call live or meeting live, and
Mhm.
I did. I was there when you were voluntold, co-nominated. Let's see which perspective to be the chairperson.
That
What
yeah,
was
that
going through
was
your head on that one?
well, I had no idea what a
Mhm.
chairperson actually does because
Yeah.
I mean, I would attend meetings. I've attended meetings before,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
had no and it was like crickets. So when I get crickets in any capacity, I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay, somebody's gotta say something."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I did, and I
Uh-huh.
said, "I nominate myself,"
Mhm.
and then everybody was fine with it,
Yeah.
and I
They're
didn't
like, "Oh,
real
thank goodness."
I didn't realize at that moment that the moment that I was put into that position that I was supposed to be running the meeting. I had no idea,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so I
Mhm.
was completely unprepared for that.
Yeah.
But, here we are.
Yeah. So you would not know that you did not know that. So just on my perspective from this side of the video screen, that you've stepped into this role very seamlessly from our perspective here, and I think you do a really great job facilitating those meetings. So
Thank
yeah,
you so much. It's
yeah,
all
yeah.
I'll let you guys in on a little secret that I
Mhm.
type up an entire script before
Uh-huh.
the board meeting to make sure that I stay on track.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's very appreciative because I've been to different, not just this board, but different board meeting where they do go off track, and it's like, why are we talking about this? And not to say that the AG is not going to get you right back on track because he's really good about that
Yes,
too.
he
But
is.
yeah, absolutely. So I know I'm kind of talking like behind the scenes kind of things are well, not even behind the scenes because it's public, but I'm going to assume that a lot of people that are watching this, or particularly my students that will watch this later, they have no clue what we even are talking about or what a board meeting
Sure.
is or any of that kind of stuff, right? So can you talk just like a little bit about what board meetings are, or like what goes on when they are, what are some of the things that are talked about, who's on it, those kinds of things?
Absolutely. So the board itself is a group of individuals, and particularly the board meetings. I'll talk about the board meetings. The board meetings are designed to enforce regulations
Hmm.
that have potentially been violated, and so it's an administrative court, so to speak. And so anybody who's had a complaint filed against them, they come before our board, and we basically tell them if they can have a license, if they get a license revoked, if they're
Hmm.
suspended, what kinds of reprimand might be necessary. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of legality behind it. The way that we prep for these meetings is about a week before the meeting actually happens, which is generally the fourth Monday of the month
Hmm.
at 9 a.m. on a Monday. Um, we get a very large board packet that is never really less than 300 pages to read on
Hmm.
all of the cases, investigations, and it's very detailed as to what is going to be discussed. And so we're very well prepared when these people come up. Hopefully, they are inclined to attend
Hmm.
the board meeting on their behalf to defend themselves,
Yeah.
which can be challenging when they don't. But ultimately, that's what the board meetings are for, is to help with the regulations. The other things that we do during the board meetings, we discuss as a group various regulations that we can't change, but we can discuss what our interpretation is of them
Mm-hmm.
and see if we can make things a little bit easier, not necessarily um, for, I shouldn't say not necessarily, but for the profession as a whole, but and also the license holders, and just trying to make things even
Mm-hmm.
more clear. And then also our ultimate goal is the reason why we have a board is to protect the public.
Mm-hmm.
So the board exists to protect the public, not to protect the license holders.
Mm-hmm.
Although, as a license holder myself, I like to try to see how I can make things a little bit easier while I'm there as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know some of that process happened during COVID, not that it's over, but during the height of the pandemic for COVID and some of the transitions that's happened. So an example from what I've seen is, that everything kind of shut down. So it went from, okay, we're not going to require any continuing education hours, nor will we make anybody pay for the renewals. And then it went to, okay, no continuing education, but now you got to pay for the renewals. And then it's okay, now you need the education, but you can do it all online. And then starting January, we're going back to how it's originally was written is 12 hours have to be done in person and 12 can be via online learning. So those are some of the things that I've been watching the transition, the progression as it's been going the last couple of years of how it might better, one of the examples of how it might affect the massage therapist and kind of, I don't know about protect us, but more like deal with more of like how to make our lives easier too and more fair. So
Exactly.
that part was been really interesting to follow. And I feel like it's kind of my duty to make sure I'm on top of it so I can let our students and our alumni know, because not everybody really attends the meetings. And probably for a few reasons. One, they are a little bit long.
Yes.
And they are in the middle of the day, so some people are working, and maybe that might be a challenge. But now that they're all online, it's making it a lot easier for me. I don't have to drive down to Phoenix, so that's really nice. Do you know if they'll continue that because it's been pretty helpful for everybody?
There has not been any talk about going back live. It's super convenient for the board
Mhm.
members as well and our work schedules.
Yeah.
And I find that you may have more attendance of the board
Mhm.
meetings that because we're doing them virtually.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
obviously, if somebody can't attend a board meeting, even when it's being, uh, you know, in that moment,
Mhm.
they can always listen to the MP3. Or now we even have video.
Video. Yeah, I know. I saw that. So I was like, "Ooh, I don't want to see what I looked like there." But
I
I'm
don't
glad I
even
did it
like,
after I've done the call to the public. So thank you for that.
yeah.
Um,
I don't really like to listen to myself or watch
I know, I know. I do so many of these now that I know my voice so much now that I'm like I'm not as annoyed by it anymore. But yeah, it is it's kind of hard to hear yourself sometimes and let alone see yourself later. It's kind of interesting. I have students that especially from other campuses when I go visit and they say, "Hey, you're the lady from the Zoom." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's the lady from the Zoom." So it's really funny. But I'm gonna put up the website for the state board right now because on the website there is a tab or a little heading called meetings, and it does list all of the upcoming meetings and the minutes and the recordings from the last ones, so everyone can put that on their agendas and be able to attend. And when you go there the morning of, you just click on the agenda and click on the meeting link, and somebody lets you in, and that's as easy as it is. It's really, really simple to do. So yeah, I highly recommend it to know what really happens at a meeting. And so this will kind of segue into some of our conversation that I see and I feel and what I hear and read, especially onto the interwebs and social media, is that there's like a magic button that the board's just going to fix everything and be able to change stuff. And that I don't know if people even realize that there's like pages of rules and regulations that associated, not to mention the statutes. I always do that. Um, and it's not as simple as being able to say, hey, we want to make this change, let's do it. So if can you, without going too into detail, if we wanted to make a change on something that's already in our rules and regulation or in our statute, what would be the process to even do that?
Well, the process, as I understand it, is one, you choose something that you want to change or get rid of or add.
Mhm.
And as per the governor's uh, rule now, you cannot change or add or get rid of, well, you can't change or add anything unless you get rid of three others first.
Mhm.
So if you look at the rules and statutes and you say, you know what, I don't like that one, I want to try to change it, we all have them.
Yeah.
I'd be like, this needs to be changed or updated.
Mhm.
Can't do it unless you get rid of three. So
Yeah.
you have to choose which ones are not great, and
Yeah.
we need all of them. Um,
Right.
then on top of that, it's not just a matter of it's kind of going with the misconceptions. The board itself does not make the rules and the regulations and the laws. Those come from legislators.
Mhm.
And our job is only to enforce them and support them,
Mhm.
and interpret them.
Yeah.
So the only advantage that we have is, well, how do we interpret that?
Mhm.
And can we use our interpretation to maybe add a policy to what
Mhm.
already exists that still supports what's already there?
Right.
So a lot of times, so if it was a brand new law,
Mhm.
that actually gets introduced by a legislator,
Mhm.
so not the board at all. So
Right.
and our newest one is HB 2438 for the clearance card.
Mhm.
That was not introduced by the board. It was introduced by legislator Jennifer
Right.
Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah, and even that, so I was going to ask you about that, and I forgot to put it on the list. So I'm glad you brought it up, so we can maybe talk a little bit about it.
Sure.
But even that process, it wasn't like one day there was a bill and it went forward and everyone's on board and we're all doing it now, right? So the process, right? There was a hint of something getting introduced. There was bringing it forward to the board and the staff to get some input from there, to get some discussion, and then going back and forth a little bit. And I know I was listening when the investigator, David Elston, was talking from his point of view of being a former law enforcement officer, and what that was going to change for everyone. And then you all having to make a decision on what your yay or nay was going to be about it. And even if you had a say in it, there still could go either way on the other
Yeah.
side, because it's
And
ultimately up to,
yeah,
yeah,
ultimately, the board doesn't have a say as to whether or
mhm,
not it's going to pass.
right,
It was whether or not we were in support of the bill
right,
itself. And with that particular bill, we actually, our executive director, and Mr. Elson, David Elson, we all worked together to say, "Hey, can you make these amendments before it
mhm,
goes any further?"
yeah,
And they did that for us as a courtesy because,
mhm,
as licensed professionals, and board members,
mhm,
Michael Tapscott and I, we had some genuine concerns about how that was going to be implemented. So
right,
with the amendments, it actually ended up being better, way better than it
mhm.
originally was proposed.
Yes. So with that, of course, through social medias, it's like now, what? I already got my fingerprints. What? I don't know that. When do I need to do this? We have people calling the school. What do I do about my finger? Because they can't, the board's really busy to take all the phone calls. So they go to the schools next to see if we can help
Sure.
them. And so there's a lot of confusion about it because everyone already jumped the gun and now they're like, okay, we need to do all these things. It's like, take a deep breath. Nothing, yes, it's gone through, but nothing's like in process yet. But can you explain a little bit of what the bill changed or added or will add to what we are going to need to do?
Absolutely. So the only thing that is changing is that all licensed massage therapists will now be required to have a level one fingerprint clearance card, which is very different from the traditional inked or even digital
Mhm,
background check fingerprints that
mhm,
we're doing for schools. because they look at two different things. A federal background check, which we currently do, is basically lifelong. Anything that you did bad, if you didn't put a campfire out, and you got a ticket for it, it's going to be on there.
Mhm.
Whereas the clearance card has very specific things about, if you actually were arrested, and charged with something, and maybe did some time. Um,
Mhm.
and there's certain categories, like if anything, was about prostitution, or
Mhm.
anything involving children, um,
Mhm.
that could prevent somebody from getting a clearance card. And
Mhm.
so those are some of the things that, one of our biggest questions that we're just, inquiring minds want to know from the AG's office is,
Mhm.
what if somebody has had a license for a long time in Arizona, but they may not qualify for a level one clearance card because of something that happened in their past?
Mhm.
And is there going to be a grandfathering in? And the answer to that is we don't know yet. Um,
Mhm.
but that's why we had some of the amendments put in, so the
Mhm.
board still has jurisdiction. So it might be a case by case,
Right.
where those people are still able to practice and have a license. And there is something called, a good cause clearance, or no,
Okay.
good cause exemption. So
Okay.
for those who might not, otherwise qualify for a level one clearance because of something
Mhm.
on their record, they would, try to get that expunged. Um, and then so
Gotcha.
it's called a good cause exemption. That's what it's called. Um,
Okay.
so if somebody knows that they have something that might
Mhm.
prevent them from getting it, they might want to start looking into how to get it off their neck.
Okay. Okay. So interesting. And so is my understanding correct in that right now the board stance is that you would require both?
Yes,
So because they both do different things,
correct.
basically.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah,
Upside
so that
of
was
that, on the upside with that, what we would encourage, and we can't do anything about educational institutes, but we would
Mhm.
encourage, anybody who has a program, a massage therapy program, to do the level one clearance card in the beginning with the admissions,
Mhm.
because that will actually speed the process way up, when it
Mhm.
comes licensing time, because we would be able to issue basically an interim license because their
Mhm.
level one clearance card is already good, and
Mhm.
then they can be working while we're waiting for the background check.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It comes with a little bit of challenges as a school because sometimes, we have students that don't complete the program or still, have a balance or things like that that make it a little challenging for like some of the licensing requirements that we assist with because we everything's included in our program here and we help to fund that and everything. But that's neither here nor there. But it's something I have brought back to our leadership team to consider something, or at least to maybe people already have them, because there are people who already have these that, and I have one. I used to work in a volunteer in an elementary school, and they required me to get one because I
Mhm.
was doing some reading classes. So, and so for me, from what I understanding, I would just add the state board as an agency to get the information,
That's
basically.
correct.
So I only have like a year left on it, so let's move fast with this one.
So you'll have to do it like everybody else
I
does,
know, yeah, the other
right?
way around. I know. So for people already licensed, what's some advice for you for about that for them, like how to take a deep breath and not worry until, or when are we gonna have our panic moments, I guess.
So So there's no question that this law goes into effect January of 2023.
Mhm,
So everybody's going to have one. Um, you can start the process already. Most people, I mean, I shouldn't say most. I would say a lot of people can probably just go ahead and apply for
mhm,
their fingerprint clearance card.
yeah,
For those who, may have some hiccups,
mhm,
with getting the clearance card, you can still try to get the clearance card and find
mhm,
out what you need to do to maybe get that good cause exemption going too.
mhm, mhm,
Because ultimately everybody's going to have one. We're supposed to have more answers about some of those trickier questions
Mm-hmm.
from the AG's office. And I have a meeting with them coming up very soon because we have a board prep meeting this week for our next
Okay. Yeah.
so it's some of them is going to be kind of as it comes up, but that's probably the biggest one
Yeah.
that people are concerned about.
Yeah, I can only imagine the calls and the franticness that's gonna happen with
Oh,
with
I've gotten the
like,
messages already
oh,
too.
like when things are actually due, and I've had people reach out to me and they didn't know that they were required to renew their they thought it was automatically renewed when the board like let people didn't have to do the continuing education, and I like, oh my goodness, like why aren't you figuring like I don't know. To me, if I have a license, I want to know more about it, like know what's going on with it, but of course I mean, I'm in a unique position that I have a lot of other people depending on me bringing that information to them too. So,
Right.
so I guess it's good they're calling me because I do know the answers sometimes. Yeah. So I try to
And
divert some of those
and if you
questions.
don't know the answer, then you
Yeah.
probably know people that do have the
Yeah.
answer that can help.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I know. So we were talking about some misconceptions and we kind of hinted at one about board staff and board members. So can you explain a little bit of what the differences are?
Sure. So the board members are actually appointed by the governor to basically uphold the laws and regulations and statutes
Mhm.
in the state. The board members are not paid. We do not get paid um, a salary of any kind. We do get paid to attend a board meeting
Mhm.
um, in the amount of $100 for
Woo!
it.
Crazy.
um,
That's 3 cents a page of your
right, right. So we do get paid that, and that's for reading all 300 to 600 pages of
yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
Um, and we participate in the board meetings. We do not have any. We don't have any more access to the licensing process than you would.
Mhm.
We basically we go on Google, we type in the AZ massage board just like everybody else, and you want to
Mhm.
know the status. I'm going to click on your status, and that's how I find out
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, because we're board members, we do have just a tiny bit of pull, but we don't want to overwhelm the staff
Mhm.
either
Mhm.
because they're doing their jobs. Now, the
Yeah.
staff, they get paid, they get a salary. I don't know what that salary is.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, it's not enough, in
Mhm.
my opinion. Um, we currently have one licensed processor, one in training. He's almost done with training. So if
Mhm.
Tony, bless his heart, ever needs to take a vacation, then Paul can kind of pick up where he left off. So
Yeah.
that we got the two. We have the executive director, which picks up everybody's stuff
Mhm.
when things fall to the ground. And then we have investigator David Elson.
Mhm.
That's the board staff. That's it.
Yeah.
So we have approximately somewhere between 9,000 and 11,000 active licensed massage therapists in
Mhm.
Arizona, and we have four staff
Mhm.
members to
Mhm.
take care of all of them, including initial applications, renewals, out of state reciprocity, university
Mhm.
license applications, phone calls, emails. Every
Mhm.
Monday, there's at least 200 emails in the email box waiting to be answered. Um, yeah, so that's
Yeah.
it. That's
Yeah.
that's what we have. Now, a lot of people are like, "Well, why don't you just hire more people?"
Mhm.
Well, we've been trying to. We've been trying to for the last 3 years, and it all boils down to budget.
Mhm.
And when I say budget, um, it's not just a matter of we don't have the money to do it. We have to get permission to use
Mhm.
the money to hire somebody, and that's where the government comes in.
Yeah.
So it's not about what the board really wants to do because we really want to have people, but we have to
Mhm.
get it approved in order
Mhm.
to do it. And the last 3 years of asking have been denied.
Yeah.
So we literally, Mr. Tom Augerton, our executive director, has put in another request. And I
Mhm.
said, ask for the stars in the sky. And if they give us
Mhm.
one thing, um,
Yeah.
it'll be better than what we have.
Right. Yeah. I know I was working with him to kind of help with support with that, to say from our perspective what the challenges that we have in that with our compliance and our status of an accreditation school, and everything relies on our students getting licensed and employed. And so understanding, we had a great conversation about it and understanding more of the process and how we could help and write something that would maybe be heard from like a business point of view, that there are businesses that are suffering because the licensing not going as quickly as we would like it to, and it's not as simple as, well, just hire somebody else. It isn't,
Right.
when someone else holds the purse strings and isn't allowing you to use it. So that makes it a little bit of a challenge, a bit of a challenge, a huge challenge
Yes.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've often asked Tom, I'm like, who do I have to make nice with in
Hmm.
the governor's office to be like,
Yeah.
hey, could you please take our profession more seriously? Because we
Hmm.
have all of these stakeholders waiting for licenses,
Yeah.
renewals, and such. And, they do what they can. Um, on that note, too, when it comes to renewals and stuff, it's very, very important that um, those who do have a license make sure that they update their current address with the board, just like
Mhm.
they do with the driver's license,
Yeah.
because they won't get their note card that says that they have to renew. Uh,
Right.
I've seen the stacks of mails of returned mail. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I know it's a challenge. And just to be on top of your own things too, to know your license expires on your birthday in 2
Yes.
years. So maybe put a little reminder on your Google Calendar or something that you need to
Mhm.
do it, or a copy of your license somewhere large and highlighted when it's supposed
Right.
to.
And
When
do it 60 days before, because
Mhm.
that's when you can start the renewal process.
Mhm.
You don't want to wait 2 weeks before,
Right.
because you might not get renewed in 2 weeks. We had
Right.
that problem this week with a lot of our functions on the board website not working,
Right. Yeah.
which I understand all are working now. So the
Yeah.
online payment features working, the
Yeah.
online applications are working.
That was a beautiful surprise to walk into when I was helping the student with the licensing, and I was like having her fill out paper. And I was like, "Hold the phone, it's back, it's
I
back!" I was so excited.
was like,
We were very excited. Yeah, it was so nice, especially with the credit cards. Oh, it makes life so much easier. With our,
yes.
I was having to get a money order from accounting. It was a whole thing.
And I do want to kind of touch on that too,
Mhm,
because I know that that was just so inconvenient for so many people.
mhm,
And, you know, yes, I'm a board member and I will, defend the board to the end as
mhm.
much as I possibly can. The board and the board staff had nothing to do with that. And it was
Mhm.
it had everything to do with another agency that controls it. Just be like,
Yeah.
oh, it's not that important. We'll get
Yeah.
to it when we get to it. And so finally, I'm just like, come on,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
take care of this. Come on.
Oh, yeah, maybe someday we'll have a whole conversation on how we can better have awareness over there on the Capitol to
Yes.
take us a little more serious. I have some ideas, but
So do I.
maybe.
I'm working on them in the
Yes.
behind the scenes.
Nice. Yeah, I was talking to a couple of government relations people and the different agencies and such, and we're talking about like the hill days, and you go and you do like awareness days and things
Yes.
like that. So, maybe we can come up with something. I'd love to, like, I've talked to Mike Tapscott a few times about us all collaborating as schools and getting something going, because ultimately we're trying to make this profession stronger, and we all have our goal to see our students happy in the field and working on people, and more people getting massages really is our goal. So I would say it's a pipe dream, but no, I don't think so. It's just
It
something we got
really
to sit down
isn't.
and get down. Yeah.
Yeah, it really isn't. Tom and I have already talked about it, and so that's definitely it's something that we want to do. He's mentioned it several
Mhm.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it's up to Angie. It's going to fix it all. She has all the free time.
try.
So we talked a little bit about licensing, but I know specifically when we started talking about doing this recording, was to talk about the process of licensing and how people really don't understand what the steps are that goes on. So, and so much so that I learned about the mailroom. Whoa. Like, oh my. Okay. So just that alone was a big deal to understand and learn about. So would you like to walk us through how a application becomes a license?
Absolutely. So I know that, things have changed now that you can go back to doing things online, but still
Mhm,
things have to be mailed in.
mhm,
Um, but literally a lot of the things you can put all of the, your photo, passport photo, all of it can all be emailed
mhm,
to the info email and sent in regular mail. So
mhm,
when you do send it in regular mail, it's going to take about 7 to 10 days for the actual board staff to get their hands on it because it has to go through a mail room.
mhm,
And in the mail room, you have, because there's a chance there might be some money in there, all pieces of mail have to be opened by at least two people at the same time. And when that happens, when you have more than one person going through envelopes, things can get lost. So that's why
mhm,
I always recommend also emailing everything
mhm,
to the info. Um, from that point, once our license processors receive the application, then the file is created.
mhm,
And that's the easy part. One would think, okay, great, 7 to 10 days, I'm going to have my license, but not
mhm,
so fast. The longest part of the entire thing is the fingerprint background check. So when we include those the fingerprint cards in with the applications, then Mr. David Elson gets the stack of fingerprint cards and he sends them to DPS
mhm,
to have them reviewed and actually does the criminal background check. He can only send so many at one time. DPS will only accept so many at one time. I don't know what that magic number is. I will
mhm,
say 20,
mhm.
20 at a time. And then it takes 6 to 8 weeks for DPS. Well, that changes. Yeah, I think it's 8 to
Yeah, it
12
changes
now.
daily. Yeah.
Yeah, I think now it's up to 12 weeks for DPS to do the background check and then mail them back to the board where
Mhm,
David gets his hand on them, and then he gets a paper sheet that says which ones went through, which ones are fine, which ones were rejected, and which ones he has to investigate.
mm,
And then the ones that aren't rejected or that he has to investigate that are all in the clear, then he creates a spreadsheet, gives them back to the license processor and says, these people are ready to get their license. And these people, not so much. They either have
mhm,
to get their fingerprints redone or I have to do an investigation.
mm,
So if the prints get rejected, that process starts all over again.
mhm.
So that 8 to 12 weeks, you got to get the new prints, send them to the board. Then David sends them out 8 to 12 weeks later. You hope they weren't rejected again,
Mhm.
and from there. From the time that they get cleared, from David giving them back to the license processors, Tony and Paul,
Mhm.
um, it's about 10 more days to get everything back in the system, um, and ready to go. So it takes it
Wow.
it takes a minute. Um,
Yeah.
but that's where that clearance card is probably going to come in real handy for a lot of people too, because
Mhm.
they'll be working with the clearance card while they're waiting for their background check to come back.
Right. Yeah. Whew.
And if the prints got rejected for some reason, they're
Mhm.
still fine.
Yeah, we're having better luck with that, but still, we've had now that we do it digitally, it's gotten a lot better, but
Yes.
we still had a couple get rejected. They got them. Luckily, the live scan redoes them if it is an issue. But
Yes.
yeah, there has been some frustration with that. It's just really interesting from our perspective. We had been doing them, on ink for years, and just this
Mhm.
year, all of a sudden, they started coming back rejected. I'm like, what's the difference? But I don't know. Maybe they've gotten a new system to scan them or something like that. I don't. Who knows? So we're just like, all right, moving with the times, going digital.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
understand ink is an art and it can be easily messed up.
Yeah.
So that's why, digital.
Yes. Yeah. The wave of the future.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I love it. I love it. Let's see. I just want to make sure we got hits most of our questions about the misconceptions. Can you think of anything else um, that people might not quite understand or
I think
um,
most of it we've covered. I think one of the things that I just really want to hit on is that um, that's commonly misunderstood is that a lot of times the board what people think the board can do, they can't do, because a
Mhm.
lot of times we're waiting on other agencies.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just magically happen at the board. I mean, they literally have a couple of cubicles and they
Mhm.
share a floor with other boards as well.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times it's asking questions of, the powers that be, I call them, the government, and then waiting on other agencies to help things happen. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and sometimes how the money works too. It's like we have the money that people pay for their initial licenses and their
Mhm.
renewals, but it doesn't mean that we have this bank account where we can just write checks out of and hire people.
Yeah.
It's controlled by another entity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a challenge. So who do we have to call to make things? I mean, there's no right answer, right? You had said that yourself. Who do I have to be nice to? It's like
Yeah, and
it's
it's really about
okay.
it's about getting out there and knowing the legislators
Mhm.
and helping legislators and policy writers understand our business because I think that most of them they're just like, oh, you put the lotion on the skin,
Mhm.
and it's not that. It's so
Yeah.
much more than that. And I
Yeah.
think that if we help people understand the importance of our industry and
Mhm.
to take it more seriously,
Yeah.
then we would probably get a bit more assistance.
Right. Yeah, I think that is definitely a challenge, and that's probably another whole conversation we could go into what the challenges the industry faces and the scrutiny and the misconceptions about what we do. And it reminds me of one of the guests that you have, which I've loved how you do bring on different guests to the meetings and talk about different topics. And it was a while ago we had some. Like I think it was two men from a task force in Phoenix or something like that.
Yes,
And
yes,
even on when they were talking about their process and you had to school them a little bit about like, well, actually, I remember the word shower when that was one of their keynotes. If anybody advertises a shower, and I know there is some connotation with it related to on illegal activity and such, but there's the Vichy shower and spas and all, and they were like, oh, and so it made me think like, these, they're well intentioned and they're fighting the good fight, but there's still a lot of education that has to happen to really understand our industry and to know what we're really doing. And it's not just rubbing
right.
oil and lotion on people. So,
Exactly. Yeah, and I think Sandy Fritz had recently just posted something on social media about how it's every massage therapist's responsibility to know their local law enforcement,
mhm,
know who
mhm.
they are, get to know them, and help get them educated. Because if they don't know, they don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
of course we know,
yeah,
um, but they don't because
right.
they're not doing what we do.
Yeah.
So it's important to provide that education for them too. Otherwise, they're
Mhm.
not going to take us seriously. They're just going to
Right.
lump us in with the
Mhm.
others. And I'd really like to see some separation between massage therapy and I understand that human trafficking is very important, but they're two different they're two different
Mhm.
things. And there's always going to be that connotation, I
Yeah.
think, at least in my lifetime. Um, but we have to change that narrative.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I tell my students all the time, and part of that, because sometimes you get overwhelmed and frustrated. It's like, it just seems like it's bigger than us. And it is. But at the same time, the more that us one by one are following the correct rules and being professional, and educating those around us, that's going to hopefully trickle down a little bit more and be a part of that greater, the bigger piece of the puzzle. At least
Right.
I would hope so. And understanding scope of practice, which is another thing I think gets a little confused with people on what they can do. And some of the things I read about people, oh, you can work under their license and you can do you guys need to read the rules and regulations a little bit.
Mhm.
But one of the ones that recently that a student was reported for advertising for doing massages was on the last calls, and that made my ears. And I want to make sure my students like get highlights of that, because they often ask me, well, can I do? And I said, the laws are pretty clear that you cannot charge if you don't have a license. And they're like, well, what about waiting between, end of school? And I said, you're not even insured. That's the other part of it too. There's no insurance company, none of the associations are going to insure you if you're in that gap either.
Right.
So you need to be really careful. And I know it's hard to wait. And we luckily we have a chiropractic assistant certificate our students earn as well. So they are able to
Perfect.
legally be able to help a little bit in that sense and get some, some experience that way. But not everybody wants to go into that field either. So, unfortunately there is that wait, but maybe work on the marketing and build the skills a little more and that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's important for us to understand what we are allowed to do and not allowed to do, and uphold that, I think.
Right. And I know a lot of times, people will try to skate around, the
Mhm.
wording and be like, oh, well, I'm not really taking money. I'm not charging money, but I'm accepting
Mhm.
donations.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's very clear that if you are performing massage and receiving financial gain from it in any way, it is being done illegally. Uh,
Mhm.
and it could prevent somebody from obtaining their license if
Yeah.
found out.
Yeah.
So I would say err on the side of caution. Don't
Mhm.
do it.
Yeah.
And hopefully with some things coming up in January of 23, people won't have to wait so long.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and we just have to keep plugging along. I just
Exactly.
love it. Yeah. Um, all right. So I know we could probably keep talking. I'm really enjoying chatting with you, but I want to be respectful of your
Likewise.
time.
I
And
got something
I
else going on.
yeah. and you've got the 600 pages to read eventually. So you got to clear your brain a little bit. So, um, but I would love, if we want to talk about some of the other things another time, I'd love to have you back on for different of the topics we've been mentioning or something else that you would like to reach out to students. I know you have a heart in education as well. So we would love to feature you again for sure.
I would
Um,
be honored to come back.
Yay.
And I like to share the information.
Mhm.
I do have, you and I are active on social media as well, so
Mhm.
that's how we know each other. Also,
Yeah.
I can be found easily on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
I
love it.
would invite people to look me up, and I'm happy to help
Mhm.
wherever I can.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that offering, and I'll give everyone your private cell phone number. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
I won't answer it if it's not
I know, yeah.
perfect in there.
Okay. So to wrap up, I'd love to ask you our 5 little hot seat fun questions
Okay.
and see what your answers would be, because it's one of my favorite parts of doing this. So which talent or superpower would you most like to have?
So I'm gonna go. I gave this one a lot of thought, and I kept coming back to the same thing. And it's not necessarily your classic superpower,
Mhm.
but I would like to be so kind that it goes backwards in time and undoes the things that hurt.
Oh, wow. Ah, that is so heartwarming. I love that. Kindness is very powerful.
It
So I
is.
bet you, if anything, it has a definite forward effect for sure. And I know that's definitely has effect on those around you. It's my favorite quality of anybody, kindness.
Yes.
So
Agreed.
it
Agreed.
goes a long way. If you weren't a massage therapist, what would you most likely be doing?
I love to cook, and a lot of people love my cooking. So I thought
Mhm.
I would probably open up a cafe,
Oh,
and I would name it something like I'll make whatever I want when I feel like it. And so just pick something that I really want to make that day and then
Yeah.
feed everybody.
I love that. It's a little like set menu for the day or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's like,
That's
"No,
very
we
cool.
don't have that, but we have
Yeah.
this." I made
Yes.
chicken enchiladas today, so
Yeah.
that's what you're having if you
That's,
want.
yeah, but and you won't complain. You get what you get, and you don't make a fit.
Right?
I love that. That's awesome. If money and circumstances weren't issues, where would you most like to live in the world?
I couldn't make up my mind on this one. I would love to have
Mhm.
multiple homes in various parts of the world because
Mhm.
I like mild weather.
Mhm.
Um, so I would like to stay in the mild climates, and so when it
Okay.
would start getting cold or even too hot and
Yeah.
fun, then I would go someplace else that's a little bit more mild. Um,
Okay.
so yeah,
Uh,
I am kind of a homebody and I don't get out much anyways. So
mhm,
there's lots
mhm.
of places that I would love to visit that I have
Yeah.
not.
Oh, I love that. And that's this country alone. There's so many places. I will never see all of them. But yeah, I'd love to travel myself. And I like your idea. Get small little places everywhere and I can go to lots of places. So,
Exactly.
what is your most treasured possession?
Myself.
Okay.
My I have this one body and this one mind, and I like me. I think I'm pretty awesome.
Mhm.
Um, and there's no other mind like mine that I know of because I can't be in somebody else's mind. Um, so I have to take care of me because I only get one of me, and
Mhm.
nobody makes it out alive. So
You're here. That's beautiful. I love it. It's the first time I've heard that. And then last but not least, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
don't take things so personally.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times it's not about me.
Mhm.
Um, when somebody's having a hard time, and I still do it. I
Yeah.
still, somebody comes at me and they're like, "But you did that."
Yeah.
I still take it personally, and
Yeah.
I try to want to fix it,
Yeah.
um, and it weighs on me. And so
Yeah.
I would tell my 18-year-old self to stop doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would listen.
Yeah. This is true. Yeah. That's maybe I should rephrase that question. What would you tell your 18-year-old self and your 18-year-old self would listen to you? That's a whole other story.
Right, right.
But good advice for everyone. And it's a work in progress, right? I
Yes,
can
we
definitely
all
say
are
the
every
same.
day. Every day is a
Mhm.
new day and a new
Yeah.
start.
Yeah, I love that. Well, on that note, Angie, I want to thank you again for coming on. We had a great conversation. I'm going to put the state board website up there again so people know if they want to attend any of the meetings. Licensed therapists can get continuing education credits, right, for being able
Correct.
to joining, and
Yes.
they have to fill out a form at the start of the meeting, I believe, to get the credits. But there's a little link in the agenda that you can do that with. But anyway,
Yes, and yeah,
yeah. But come to a meeting, which is virtual. Just click on the link and find out what the board's doing behind the scenes, and behind the scenes in front of the doors, basically, because it's very enlightening and you learn a lot for sure. And it's important. It's our industry, and we need to elevate it, and that's part of what we're doing. So thank you again for that, and we'll see everyone on the next live stream. Bye, everybody.
thank you.